Okay. The diversity duo where culture meets commerce. Let's do this.
So, hey, Lisa, let me introduce you to my friend Valerie Zolezzi-Wyndham. She's a strategic and big picture thinker. Valerie brings creativity, joy, and excellence to her work, promoting good. Valerie has a gift for nurturing, learning, dialogue, and inspiring inclusive leadership. She's an innovator and a leader. Valerie was an impactful social justice, inclusive lawyer and activist. She successfully designed and sustained equity-led programs with incredible partners across sectors that continue to thrive today. She's also has deep commitment to her community. And I also want to mention that Valerie is a very proud Mexican American. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to my friend Valerie.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi, nice to be here with you. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. It's always slightly painful to hear yourself introduced in that
way. And please develop it more, because I left a few things out and I want to hear straight from you.
I am a mom to 2 kids who are now in college. I have my business Promoting Good. We just turned 8.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's an exciting milestone, right?
Sure is.
Every year, it's like, this is awesome. It gets even more awesome. I have a beautiful team of 7 who do this work with me. Half of us are here in Massachusetts, and then the rest of the team is across the country. And, and our mission is to help our partners promote good. And
what does that mean?
What does it mean? It means creating an environment where everyone in their team can thrive. And it means understanding how systems work, and maybe how systems can be improved, so that everyone who you hire can have the impact both that they want to have, but also that you need them to have. So that's what our work is about.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So you're helping HR teams? Is that?
So we often work with HR teams, but we're also working with C-suites. We might be working with communications teams to think about, what is it that you're communicating to your clients? Mm-hmm. And are you communicating in a way that helps people who you want to buy your products to be seen in them? Whether you're communicating in a way that shows respect, and so that you can advance your mission. So HR teams, C-suites. We also work with folks who are direct service providers. So for example, when we worked with banks, we might be working with folks who are in the branches, helping them to figure out, how do they build a relationship with people that come in the door, or that maybe they want to come in the door but aren't.
Okay. So the outreach into new communities and how to break into markets, is that
Yes.
what we're talking about?
Exactly.
That's wonderful. And kind of I don't want to interrupt you, so if I sometimes I like to cut in, and I shouldn't, but I don't want to hit your flow, but so you're welcomed into people's organizations. You get to see kind of behind the doors what's happening, and from a cultural perspective, how are organizations immersing themselves into their communities. What's your first steps? How do you kind of kick off a project? What does it look like?
So we kick off our projects by understanding what the experience is like. Normally for employees. Most of the time we're coming in, right, because the company wants to better address the needs of the employee base. It could also be, though, that they're having trouble connecting with community. And so in either of those situations, we're doing an assessment to understand what the culture is like. And sometimes we're coming in because they've had a problem, right? So, you had a campaign to hire in a more open way and it's not working, or you had some kind of behavior happen in your organization that caused harm. And the people who call us are curious, right? Something has happened that has made them question, to be a little curious about something that's happening that isn't like resonating.
Okay.
Right? And so that's what we do first. We just come in and listen to try to understand what what is getting in the way? Most of the clients who we work with are people who want their workplace to be one in which everyone can thrive. And they have intentions to be inclusive, but something prevents that goal from being met, right? And so our work is really about helping you figure out the disconnect between the impact that you want to have with the impact you have. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense.
It's great answer.
Are
Thank
there
you.
kind of trends that you're seeing that are, I don't know, like the heavy hitters of some high percentage of things that you're finding are more prevalent in, whether it's by industry, whether it's by geography, whether it's by, you fill in the blank for me, that you're seeing systematic problems, and if so, how are you thinking in addressing those?
I'm now speaking as a lawyer. I'm going to be like, it depends, which I know people, say is always what lawyers say.
Yes. Yes.
It depends. Every organization, the issues present differently in organizations. But I would say that it's normally one of three problems, right? You have a culture problem. And so that could be that there are tensions on your team and no one says anything about them or does anything about them, right? There's like a politeness problem. I see that a lot from a culture perspective. Another challenge is that there's like a systems challenge, right? Like the organization has said, we are going to have a fair hiring process. And then when you look at the outcomes of that hiring process, it's not achieving the results, right? There's a system problem in there.
Sure.
And then the third thing that can happen is that companies have set goals that are very vague, very broad, and not actionable.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that we're understanding the need today and that we're helping our clients figure out how to solve a problem that can be solved in a year or two, as opposed to like, we're going to achieve 50% growth in X,
Right.
which, that's an impossible goal.
Okay. No, thank you. That's interesting.
Valerie, promoting good focuses on inspiring inclusive leadership. What strategies do you find most effective in fostering this kind of environment within an organization?
That's a great question. And when we hit 5, we decided to pause and really take a look at the work we had done with our clients and to examine who had been successful and who hadn't been, and who had been able to sustain the change that we helped them make. And what we discovered, and now we validated with some research, with a research partner, is that leadership is what creates and sustains the change. And when I'm talking about leadership, so we have developed a framework that we're going to be calling Cultivate, that is launching now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And so we believe that there are 8 traits to inclusive leaders, and that when people in organizations, and we're not talking just about C-suite leaders, right? We're talking about sort of anyone being able to lead from whatever seat they're sitting in. They need to be flexible. They need to communicate inclusively, right? They need to be curious and courageous. And the lack of alignment around those competencies doesn't allow companies that really want their environments to work for everybody to achieve the success that they want. And so where our work around inclusive leadership is identifying the gaps in leadership that prevent people from implementing, either a supplier diversity strategy, problem solving when issues emerge, addressing the conflicts that arise on teams that allow them to have conversations that they need to have. And even here, like one of the things I loved before we went live, we were talking about a few topics where there's a disagreement between the two of you.
Yeah.
And it's so cool that you can have those conversations. And we'll keep some of those offline. But I raise that because I think part of the challenge that happens on teams is that teams don't know how to manage conflict that needs to happen, right? So if your supplier diversity program isn't working for everybody, but you're not open to hear that feedback because there isn't trust, because you don't know how to be curious or how to be courageous and say the thing, you're not going to achieve the success that you want. And so when we talk about centering promoting good's work in leadership, it's equipping teams to be able to have the conversations and make the decisions and the change that's needed. And unless you have that EQ leadership, so much stalls. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
I love it. Thank you.
that was a
Thank
great
you. It's
answer.
very,
But that's
on
what our
point.
work's about.
No, that's really great. And I think two things. One, and I do appreciate that you brought that up, because I think my respect for Maria, and I believe hers for me,
Absolutely.
allows us to have a conversation that says, oh, there's a little bit of conflict here. Why don't we run towards it? Don't run towards it at full speed, right? But let's not run away from this, because it's something we need to talk about. And if we address it, where we land, it was intentional. So we have an intentional conversation. We have an intentional relationship with each other,
We
right?
do.
The expectation is that we're here to assist each other, be each other's kind of management coaches, if you will, right? I am invested in her company. She's invested in my company, and I'm invested in her success, right? Because this is my counterpart, Maria, who I want to be very successful with her organization.
Right.
Her organization isn't mine, and mine is not hers. And
Right.
yeah, I think that's really interesting, though. But I do love the intentionality of how you bring. I have met you before. Just want to point that out. And excuse me. One of the things that I recognized about you was that you are intentional in your relationships, and we're going to get to talking about how to build bridges and how to build connections. But I've watched you bring about 25, 30 women and shepherd them into a collaborative conversation, which was remarkable. And I think that I'd love to hear how that weaves into your work on a day-to-day.
I love meeting people. I love helping people meet each other. And, part of my childhood was moving a lot. Probably in the first 18 years of my life, I moved at least 11 times.
Wow.
So I'm very used to introducing myself to people and trying to figure out new spaces. And my siblings hated that and probably have some trauma that results from it. But I learned some wonderful things, right? Or was able to exercise some of my superpowers, right? In that. I think that often what's missing in teams being able to achieve excellence is them being able to build relationships, right? So if there's a good relationship, you can tell each other things that you need to tell each other, right?
That's right.
If there's trust, you can do those things. And so I love doing that for my clients. The event that you attended, right? I also love supporting powerful women and other people in building relationships that might serve them, and in helping people to have conversations where they're gonna meet new people, hear new perspectives, and I love watching it happen. Right. And so I think part of the work that Promoting Good does, in the 9 to 5, is doing that teamwork with our clients. Part of the sort of extra work that Promoting Good does through my relationship work is helping other people find those relationships that are going to serve them, right? Whether it's to get two people to network who might partner because they're entrepreneurs, or for somebody to maybe find an opportunity because they need to move on from where they're working,
Right.
Or just to find joy in conversation with somebody that they might not have expected they'd enjoy a conversation with, right?
Yeah.
Because even that growth on a social level, you then take that to your work, right? And it helps you build relationships at work. So I do see the social work that I do, and by that I'm not a social worker, but sort of the social work that I do as also really important to what people can learn that they then bring into their work, right?
Yeah. No, that's really nice. And you talked about moving so often, and I mean, you've lived in a lot of places. You were in Mexico. You were born and raised in Mexico City.
Yes.
You moved to France. You've lived in the United States. How has all of that travel and that world view impacted your company today?
Oh, wow. I mean, it is each of the experiences that I had moving around and living in different places. I mean, it has formed who I am and the view that I have of the world. It's definitely at the foundation of what Promoting Good does. And, my team includes Ileana Rojas, for example, who I went to high school with in Mexico. I don't know if you knew that. We went to high school together.
I didn't know that. But I love Ileana.
Yes, but I have learned how to survive as an outsider and to thrive as an outsider. Like, I think when you're an outsider, you can observe things that people within that space don't see. I was in Spain in December, and I saw a dear friend of mine who I hadn't seen since high school. He's a friend from Mexico, and we were talking about how, there are challenges in Mexico. There's racism in Mexico. I mean, there's other isms in Mexico too, and being an outsider lets us see that in a way that people who are inside don't, right? And I am able to, I love the different places that I've lived. I mean, some more than others. There's a few I wouldn't go back to. But I think the thing that has allowed Promoting Good to be really successful is that I see sort of both what is good and bad in an organization. And I think some of the challenges of how people in my industry have done the work is that they have gone in on occasion and done the work in a really one-sided way, right? Or in a really critical way. And one of the things that is Promoting Good's biggest asset is that we're looking to see what you do best and what you don't do so well. And you can leverage what's awesome about an organization to help them fix what's broken. And being able to see both of those things and to appreciate both of those with love, as opposed to disdain, is part of why our clients trust us.
Okay.
Right?
That's great.
Yeah.
Love the answer. Love that. Most people that know me, they know that I'm a huge proponent of collaboration. I mean, to me, it's something that drives me, right? The diversity duo would not exist if Lisa and I did not believe in collaborations. Having said that, how has collaboration enhanced your Promoting Good initiatives?
So we work in teams. So all of our clients get served by at least 2 people. Okay. And so even within the Promoting Good team, right, we want to make sure that there's always 2 perspectives on a call, right? 2 perspectives informing how we deliver the product to our clients, right? And so that's a type of collaboration that I think is really important. We also want there to really be collaboration with our clients. We're not going in to solve a problem for you, right? We're going to build a relationship and figure out how we collaborate to solve the problems. We really are interested in helping our clients learn to collaborate themselves across role, across division, right? Often we'll go in and there's all these silos, right? There's the HR silo, there's the C-suite silo, there's the communication silo, and then there isn't trust between those teams, right? There's also sometimes even silos within the silos,
That's
right?
That's right.
And it's fascinating to watch. We want people to be able to identify challenges, and they can identify challenges on every team but their own, right?
Yes.
And so I think part of collaboration is helping each other to see our strengths and our weaknesses, talking about those, and then helping somebody to bring their greatest asset, and then you leveraging yours, which hopefully is different, for success, right? So when I think about collaboration, I don't want to collaborate only with people who are like me or who have my strengths, right? I want to collaborate with somebody who, whose superpower is not mine. Because then if we do it together, it's going to be powerful, right?
That's true.
I think it's going to be one-sided powerful.
Correct.
Right, and that doesn't help anybody.
Correct.
That's,
that's absolutely right. So I think collaboration is key. I have another good friend who is in my sector, and I'll name her because it sort of illustrates the point. Adriana Bacarro, she owns Culture Redesigned, and we're very good friends. And people ask us all the time, like, why are you all talking to each other about your work? Why do you share what you're doing? And it's like, well, first of all, there's enough work for both of us.
There you go. There you go.
And not every client is the right client for me.
That's right.
That is correct.
Not every client is the right client for her. And imagine, what if there's a client that needs both of us?
Right.
And if we don't have a good relationship, how could we serve that client, right? And then we both lose that opportunity.
That's right.
So I think we need to think about collaboration in a lot of different ways and collaborate within our work, outside of our work, right? That's how we grow more powerful. And that's part of why I love that you formed this podcast, right? You're both within the supplier diversity space, but doing different things.
That is correct.
And there's more power, right?
That's right.
The smarter and strategic a team is made, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Did that answer your question?
Of course. And shout out to Adriana. I love you too, girl. She's amazing.
Yep.
Valerie, I'd love to shift the conversation more to a cross-cultural collaboration and what that looks like, and how, obviously Maria and I have a cross-cultural collaboration, right? And it works, but it doesn't always work in organizations, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on how to make meaningful change.
Love that question.
It's a great question.
Thank you.
I think the first thing that I will say is that, cross-cultural collaboration is really, really important, right? And important across race, ethnicity, gender identity, ability, right?
Right.
And I'll even add, we also, I think sometimes we think about cross-cultural as being everything but what is white, right? And I think that's also a mistake, right? And so we need to include white culture in that cross-cultural collaboration or communication. I think what gets in the way is that as a society, we are so scared to explore that conversation, right? And right now, all of that is heightened.
Yeah.
There's so much fear, right, about saying the wrong thing,
Right.
about having the conversation, about offending somebody, and I think there's such huge missed opportunities. So I think the first thing that we have to do is to acknowledge that cultural differences exist, and that it's a fact, it's natural, right? In Mexico, we eat maíz, right? We have corn. We don't have toast, right, with our food. That's a simple thing.
Right.
There are differences, right? My husband is Irish Catholic, born from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
When his family came to our wedding, which was in Mexico many years ago, his dad was like, "Don't touch me." My father-in-law, my suegrito, who I love, And, you know, because he is not used to being kissed by people, you know, by people he doesn't know. We kiss. And it was important for him to be able to say that. And I can also imagine that people might have been offended by it, right?
True.
And so how do we create the invitation that people can name that a difference exists?
Yep.
That it doesn't mean one of them is better than the other, they're just different. And then how do we create some norms for how we're going to work across those cultures in your space, whatever that space is, right? And so if we are too scared to have those conversations, or if we assume, right, that the conversation is going to be bad, or that there's going to be conflict in it.
That's right. Yep.
You know, then you're not going to have a really good one. And so I think, again, one of the things that my upbringing allowed me to have is to love the beauty of each of the cultures.
True.
Right? Like, I love going into my mother-in-law's house, and how we greet each other there is different to how we greet each other when we go to my house in Mexico, right? And one isn't better than the other. You adapt to each.
Yeah.
And then in my own house, right, my husband and I have created sort of our own way. And so we have to do that work within organizations too. And then if there are multiple cultures, more to navigate, right? But I think seeing the merging or the blending or even just the touching of cultures in a space, like, what if we saw that as a gift as opposed to as a challenge, right? Or like we have to pretend none of it exists.
Right.
It's like, but it does
But it
exist.
does exist.
Like,
That's
it's
always
there.
weird to me. That's when people say things like, "Well, I'm colorblind," or "Oh, that doesn't matter to me."
Right.
What does that mean? It doesn't matter to you. It doesn't have. You don't. I'm not asking anybody to take on an identity that's different than their own.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you get to disregard that there are others that aren't yours.
Right.
And how do you comfortably move? And I go back to intention. If you are intentional, I'm intentional about the things I say about the relationships that I have, which gives me comfort that if I stick my foot in my mouth, it was not with the intention of saying something that was fill in the blank, whatever it was. And that the recipient of my words knows and has a relationship with me that says, wait, that's not what was supposed to be said, or that wasn't intentional for you, either that wasn't that didn't land the way you meant for that to land. And that builds the conversation. And is that really where you're talking about building these relationships within organizations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I will, you know, often what I hear, I hear a few different things. One thing I hear, and I hear this from amazing white men who are in leadership positions. Not all white men, but I do hear it, you know, it is a trend. They have questions, right? They want to do better. They want to understand. And there is such fear of getting it wrong. And, you know, and I mean, lots of reasons for that.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
But by not asking that question of somebody, you're not making any progress, right?
That's right.
And so figuring out who you ask, how you do it, right? Getting that knowledge and then being able to behave differently is really important. But to the example that you shared, I think the other big problem is that we think that the answer is in never making another mistake again. And I think that's completely wrong.
Right.
Like, so this is my work. This is what I do. I've been doing it for 8 years. Formally, I mean, I did it in my old job for 17. I still make mistakes. I made a mistake this past week. And so I think the big problem is that we think that that we have to be perfect.
Right.
And I say inclusive leadership is in how you respond to your misstep, right? Like, we're going to make a mistake.
Right.
And owning it is how we show leadership, right? And so I think giving ourselves grace and creating an environment where where those mistakes, where we try to not make the mistake. We should try not to make the mistake, right? I should use pronouns for the people,
Yes.
right? Like I
Yes.
should pronounce their names correctly. I should.
Yes.
And the way that we are hardwired, a mistake is going to happen.
That's right.
Right.
And so how do we prepare to manage that mistake with the most love and grace possible, right? And how do we model that kind of behavior and then make it contagious
Right.
so that other people have it? Like that's what's so important, right? But you have to work at making a space safe
Yep.
for that to happen, right? The reason why these men are scared to ask the question is there's cancel culture, there's like
Right.
all of these things. And so part of what we go in to do is to help organizations build mechanisms where they can build new rules and start to have those conversations together.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and I was thinking also, being on the side of hearing people say things that were a little bit inappropriate, or riding a line where I thought, I don't think you meant to say what you just said. Whether it's about my wife, whatever, it's offering that grace back, right? Because that's what creates that safe space. And I think that, when you were talking about how do you build that out so that, again, it's a two-way street. It has to be a two-way street. Everybody has to feel okay.
Yep.
And comfortable, and know every moment and every syllable isn't the definer of a relationship. It's the builder to the relationship.
That is correct.
If the intention is to have it be the builder.
That is
Well.
true. This is a perfect platform to talk about these things. We as a nation, as a community, we have to talk about what makes us different, but what makes us work. We need to put the proverbial elephant in the room back to the pasture. Let's create an environment where everybody feels comfortable talking about things that you don't know about this culture, or you would like to learn about this other culture. Let's ask those questions. Again, it's not the question, it's the intention behind the question, right? And talking about culture, I would like, Valerie, for you to talk to us about Casita Cultural and what it does for the community.
Well, I'm going to start by sort of what it did for me.
Please.
And so Promoting Good serves a host of different organizations, and we do some work in the culture space. And I started Casita Cultura Latina because there was a lot of, there's been a lot of focus of diversity, equity, inclusion work in workspaces. And, as somebody who loves culture and art, I was going into spaces and not experiencing the kind of environments that I think that I should be able to have access to in the art space. And so, play is important, and inclusion should exist in play spaces. And so we started Casita Cultura Latina in Worcester 4 years ago because Latino art wasn't being celebrated in our community. And, my home city of Worcester, or I should say like my American home city of Worcester, because I still have my Mexico City home in across the border. But, we are 25% of the population, Latinos, and yet there wasn't a celebration of Latino culture. And so Casita Cultura Latina, honestly, I created it for purely selfish reasons. And because I wanted to see myself represented in museums and art galleries and art spaces. And of course to do that for others, right? So it was purely selfish, and at the same time, the work that we do, right, is a gift back to our community.
Absolutely.
I think something that we are very intentional about is that we center Latino experience, and not just Mexican experience, right? But Puerto Rican and Ecuadorian and Dominican, right? And even our team represents the beautiful diversity of the Latino diaspora. But we want to share our art with Latino community and with the community at large, right? It's sort of like the white art of European artists belongs to everybody.
Right.
And yet, for some reason, we sort of don't think that Latino art or Black art belongs to all of us, right? And so the work that we do with Casita is to help Latinos feel seen in art, and also to share that art with everybody. Because again, another way to build bridges, right?
True. Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that. Can you describe some of the activities or programs that embody these values in action through Casita Cultural?
So our flagship event is a Day of the Dead festival that we host every year. And that's sort of how we started. It was the pandemic, and there were so many Latinos who died and who were suffering. And Dia de Muertos, which is celebrated in Mexico, and people think that it's only Mexican, but it's not. Celebrated in many other countries in Latin America, but not all of them, and in different ways in each country. And so we wanted to honor those who had died from a public health perspective. And we wanted to show the excellence of Latino culture, right? So we always have a few themes that emerge in the work that we do. So our festival, one, we are commissioning a work of art every year so that we build a collection of Latino art that will be available to the public.
It's wonderful.
Two, we are always addressing a health issue because we think that the community needs to be healthy. Equity is at the center of everything, right? So we are talking about inequities that exist. And then we are modeling equity ourselves. So we always have small businesses and larger businesses who get opportunities to participate in our events. And so, for example, our fee is sliding. And so depending on your budget, you pay a different fee, right? We're trying to make sure that we're talking about Afro-Latinos and doing it in a way that is respectful of their identities, and also that names that there is racism and colorism in Latin America, right? And that we have to, as Latinos, bring that conversation to our greater community, right? So all of our programs are infused with those values, and we're trying to model the behaviors that we hope Latinos will start to show more, but also to other communities. Like this is how we do the work, right? Because I think back to the other conversation we were having earlier, part of, we all have to model the behavior that we want to see,
That's
right?
True.
Yep.
And so if I make a mistake, I need to own my mistake and I need to speak to it. And then I need to model, how do we do this differently, right? So those are the ways that Casita is we are being very intentional about how we do our work so that everybody feels seen in it.
That's lovely. Thank you for the wonderful answer.
You know what I think is interesting is I'm a fan of art, and having been to Mexico City and really kind of going to museums and immersing myself in some of the art that was represented down there, and then coming and loving it and coming back to the United States. And honestly, it wasn't until I went to your house and I was like, look at all this art.
Yep.
Wait, I remember this art from this distant place. And I thought, so I am so appreciative of the work that you're doing towards bringing Latina art to the forefront here, because I think it's incredible, and I'm really excited to see it. I'd love to know what role creating sustainable, inclusive community initiatives means, but also more importantly, how do you celebrate the wins? How do you define what the wins are? Your organization, your personal missions are so big, they're so vast. And it's hard, and the world is kind of a weird place right now, and it's hard to see that you still have footing. How do you personally celebrate that?
Well, so it's all about celebrating our humanity and small wins, and I think this is part of the problem, right? We should have a long-term strategy,
Right.
But when we have the little successes that we need to build on top of, right, to get to that long-term strategy, we don't think we can celebrate until we get there. Right? And so we believe in celebrating every little step. And I think it's important to do that for a number of reasons. One, because it just feels good, right? Like we forget that microfeedback feels great. You do not have to wait to your 1 year review to give somebody feedback.
Right.
And please don't, like that's really bad practice, right? And so we believe in the power of celebrating every small win. And some of the small wins are actually the big wins.
That's right.
Right? So we one of the things that I most love about seeing our clients do their work and sort of in action is that we see the little behavior change that they start to show in how they interact with each other, or in how they're able to spot an unfair system. And when they're able to sort of spot it and then name it, even if it's just that first conversation, they haven't even solved the problem yet. Like that's the win.
Right. They know they're in the
That
conversation.
they know they're in a conversation, that they know that there's a problem to solve, or that they start to trust each other, because that's like they're all. I mean, most of the people who we work with, right? They're like smart people in smart roles, and so they can solve problems. But they need to know that there's a problem and to identify it and to be willing to change it. So the small wins are actually sometimes the really big wins. And they're what give us the confidence to take on the next challenge, right? So I think, we need to celebrate more often. And we also need to, if the work was seen as play, then we would just have more energy to do more of it, right? So I think that's what I'm trying to do right now. I think there is so much doom and gloom out there, and it could become paralyzing, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so and maybe there's people who would like it to be paralyzing,
Absolutely.
and that doesn't serve anyone, right?
Right.
At all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's
At all.
interesting. You had asked us what was our mission, and I think part of our mission is to have conversations that aren't stuck in doom and gloom,
Yeah.
Yes.
and to talk about where and how procurement, supplier diversity, the perspective of business, and how when we bring culture into that into commerce,
Yeah.
it creates. I don't want to say everything, but I don't have anything as big or as little as everything, right?
Right.
It starts everything if
Yes.
we allow it to.
Right.
No, that's
So-
right. And I think I think there are enough people who are interested in, good supplier diversity.
That's right.
Because they know that that's good.
It's good for
good.
business.
It's good for
For
business.
business.
And so let's just work there.
Right.
Right? There's no
Right.
need to worry about all of the rest, right?
right.
That's right.
And we also there is power in our numbers. We
Sure.
can create our own systems. We can create our own sort of networks of people who we do business with.
Yeah.
And then we will, the results will follow, and then other people will see the results, and then they'll be like, oh, we want in, right? And then we can decide whether we want them in or not. But
That's right. That's right. Well, you had said that before. You before we started taping, we were talking, and you said something about people get to make up their mind on who and how they want to do business, regardless, right? So this was a very supplier diversity, and I know we really want to go back to leadership, but I just want to address this for listeners, right? Whatever the requirements are of your supplier diversity program today, which is January 18th, right, or 19th, whatever your requirements are today, if in fact they change at a corporate level, you don't have to make them. You don't have to let them.
Right.
You don't have to let that be impactful to how you go about doing your procurement job, right? It is being a decision maker on how to pull small, diverse businesses in so that you're creating resiliency, you're creating, you're mitigating risk, you're bringing in innovation, you're talking about how to increase your brand, you're talking about cultural conversations that make sense for every single company, regardless of anything that happens in 2025. So I just want to,
yes,
I really
think that's
appreciated
absolutely
that
right.
conversation.
I'm curious we've been talking a lot about culture, And to me, part of that culture is talking about language, right? In what ways do you think language plays a role in bridging cultural gaps in communities?
Can you tell me more about language? Do you mean
Well,
like English,
for
Spanish
example,
language? Or do you mean in the words that we use? I want to understand the question.
let's take Worcester, for example. Worcester has a very healthy community, not only Portuguese speaking, Spanish speaking, English speaking. How do you think those cultures, not collide, because I don't like that word, how do they work together to be able to understand each other, not only at a cultural level, but just, as human beings?
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
Sorry for the softball.
yes. there, we have so much trauma, right? Everyone has trauma. And some of that trauma comes from thinking that the pie is so small that we need to protect our
That's right.
group.
That's right.
And it is hard for us to collaborate because we think that the opportunities are limited, and sometimes that creates tensions within communities.
It sure does.
The other thing that creates tensions with communities, right, is that each of our communities has faced communities of color, right? LGBTQ communities. Like we have all faced challenges. We have all faced disrespect. And our disrespect feels so big. It's hard for us to see that the other hurt is also big.
Right.
Exactly.
And we end up in this competition of like whose hurt is worse.
Right.
And it doesn't serve us.
At
Any
all.
of us.
At all.
And so I think, what I tried to do, if somebody is sharing with me their harm, I just want to listen. I don't need to also share mine.
True.
I hope that in another moment, in another space, I could talk about mine and people would listen, right? So I think we need to listen more and maybe not need to share and not compare, and then figure out how we get to know each other and maybe like understand that each of us have faced challenges, and then how do we move forward together, right? So I will say in Worcester there are some people who don't want to collaborate, but there are lots of people who are looking for creative ways to collaborate across language group, across ethnicity group, across race group. And I think those are the most fun places to play, and that's where the cool creativity is going to happen. And so, yes, we have challenges and we have language gaps, and I'm just going to choose to move forward with the folks who are interested in collaborating, right?
And that's all we can do.
Because that's
right?
all. Yeah,
That's all
yeah,
you can do.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
it. Be intentional.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward.
Always.
And we don't have to throw shade at folks who aren't
Right.
in
That's
our
right.
space.
That's
so
right.
I think let's just focus on moving what we want to move forward, and not also be shaming folks.
Right.
That's right.
It's just not helpful.
At all.
So I know that we reached time. This was remarkable. You are so interesting. I really am so happy I know you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's just, I want to hear you like every other week. I want you to come back and talk. Like, it was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation and also learning about your work and having your perspective on the systems, the big systems. Because I think there'd be an interesting conversation about how culture and communication can improve how those systems shift.
Interesting.
So that's maybe a conversation for another day.
Ooh,
Sounds like-
I think you're going to be
sounds
a
like
guest
you're
on
coming back.
several podcasts, Miss Valerie. In closing, I would like to ask you one more question. Looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of the Latino community within Massachusetts, specifically regarding cultural representation and civic engagement through initiatives of your Casita Cultural?
So, I'm so excited at every time I meet a young Latino a young multiracial Latino, and increasingly, Latinos who were born here and who are trying to navigate their different experience to that of their parents, and seeing them in positions of power, hopefully with less trauma than some of the older generations have. I think it's going to be amazing to see. And so I think we need to listen to that community. We need to invite them to our tables and maybe follow their lead. So I'm really excited about that, about seeing how Casita can support young leaders who become increasingly active, and they're gonna do amazing things.
They sure are. They sure are. And is there a message that you want to leave with our audience?
So, my message is that we should play a ton this year.
Yes.
We need to play, and we need to listen, and then to act with love. That's my message.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
This was the right amount of optimism for the day, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And let's continue to amplify diverse voices and foster meaningful dialogues. Until then, this is Maria.
And I'm Lisa. We're the diversity duo where culture meets commerce. Thanks for listening.